This presentation is Part 3 of 4 of Region 1's Budget Development Process. Part 3 will cover entering non-payroll items into the Budget Data Entry Worksheet. This part of the budget development process will be available for 2 weeks from May 16 through May 27, 2022, and will require the use of Region 1's Indirect Cost Calculator. Entering of non-payroll items is due by May 27, 2022. Start by working on your revenues. For local funds, this will be based on your revenue projections. For state and federal funds, this will be based on your current year approved NOGA or your grant contract. Once you have determined what your revenues will be, you can calculate the indirect cost using the Indirect Cost Calculator. This slide contains a link to that calculator. Keep in mind that this calculator does not work well with Internet Explorer. Let's look at how the indirect cost is calculated using the Indirect Cost Calculator. This is what the Indirect Cost Calculator looks like. Let's look at each item from top to bottom. This button allows you to print the page. Next, TEA has released the indirect cost rate for Region 1 for the 2022-2023 year, and that rate has been set at 12.820% for all funds. This rate is applicable to local, state, and federal funds. On this calculator, this rate is locked and cannot be modified. You will begin by entering the full amount of your calculated revenues. Remember, for local funds, this will be based on your revenue projections, and for state and federal funds, this will be based on your current year approved NOGA or your grant contract. If you have any amounts that are not applicable for indirect costs, you will enter those amounts in one of these three fields. If you have flow-through funds, enter the total amount here. Enter the total capital outlay here. In the Other field, enter any other grant-specific unallowable indirect cost items. For example, amounts over $25,000 for direct federal grants. Enter comments here to explain other amounts. Once you have entered all of your information, you are ready to calculate your indirect cost. Click the Calculate button. Keep in mind that your budget may not have applicable items for every box. This section will display the calculation results. This amount is your eligible cost for indirect cost calculation. This is your total revenue minus the three excludable items. This section is information showing how the indirect cost is calculated. This is the amount to be entered into your revenue account with the subobject 01. The total amount of expenditures that you enter into your budget data worksheet must total to this amount. This amount should agree to the following. For local funds, this will be based on your revenue projections, and for state and federal funds, this will be based on your current year approved NOGA or your grant contract. Be sure to keep a copy of your indirect cost calculation report, as this will be part of your proposed budget submission. Let's look at how to enter the non-payroll items into the budget data entry worksheet. Keep in mind that the payroll expenses from the payroll staffing review will be uploaded into eFinance by the business office and will appear in your budget data entry worksheet once you start working on your non-payroll items. Once the payroll staffing review has been submitted, you will receive a budget data worksheet like this one. This is where you will enter your requested budget for 2022-2023. The fiscal year 22 budget column represents the current budget in eFinance for the current year as of April 30, 2022. The fiscal year 22 year-to-date actual represents the current year-to-date actuals, revenues, and expenditures in eFinance for the current year as of April 30, 2022. The fiscal year 23 requested base column represents the column where you will enter your budget amounts for the 2022-2023 year. The budget data worksheet you receive will already have the payroll amounts that you submitted with the payroll staffing review. In the budget data worksheet you receive, you will enter all your non-payroll budget amounts. Ensure that the indirect cost line item is entered as a negative amount. Once you have entered all of your budget entries on the worksheet, ensure that your total revenues equal your total expenditures. Please submit your balance completed budget data worksheet to budget@esc1.net. Once the information is submitted, a final budget report will be sent back to the budget manager. Region 1's budget development process is broken out into the following 4 parts: budget guidelines memo, payroll staffing review, entering of non-payroll items into a budget data entry worksheet, and the submission of your proposed budget. Detailed presentations for each of the 4 parts of the budget development process are linked on our budget development intranet website. The budget guidelines memo is the first part of our budget development process. The next part is the payroll staffing review. This is available to be reviewed and updated from May 9th through May 13th, 2022. The business office will upload this information into eFinance. This information will be due by May 13th, 2022. The next part is the entering of non-payroll items. This is available to be reviewed and updated from May 16th through May 27th, 2022. You will use Region 1's indirect cost calculator. This information will be due by May 27, 2022. The final part of the budget development process is the electronic submission of your proposed budget. This will be submitted using DocuSign and is due by June 3, 2022. These are the due dates displayed on a calendar. The budget guidelines were available on May 6th. The payroll staffing review will be available from May 9th through May 13th to update and review and is due by May 13th. The entering of non-payroll items will be available for the 2-week period from May 16th through May 27th and is due by May 27th. The submission of your proposed budget through DocuSign is due by June 3rd. As you work on your budget for next year, feel free to contact us if you need assistance.